The unsurpassed and perfect truth is seldom met with, even in 100,000 myriad kalpas. Now we can see and hear it. We can remember and accept it. I vow to make the Buddha's truth one with myself. Homage to the Buddha, homage to the Dharma, homage to the Sangha. So good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on when you hear this, with our wonders of technology. Today I'd like to talk about something very basic to Buddhism. It's in no way an earth-shaking or shattering truth, and yet no matter if we are new to Buddhist practice or a long-time practitioner, this still comes up, and we need to continue to work on it. You know, like many elements of training. And isn't a question of we graduate and, you know, we have ourselves to deal with. So what is this? In the broadest sense, it is the practice of practicing the Dharma, the Buddha's teachings, in accordance with what the Dharma teaches. So there's the Dharma, you know, but the contents of the Dharma, we have to do more than just read, we have to digest. In an everyday sense, it's about not being pulled up and down and sideways by our likes and dislikes. This morning when we chanted the Most Excellent Mirror Samadhi, I was struck by the lines, "Avoid one-sided clinging. This is all the natural and superior truth that does attach itself to no delusion or enlightenment." So even enlightenment can be a clinging. You know, this saying, avoid one-sided clinging, it's a key. I read a Dharma talk by Tantisaro Bhikkhu entitled Beyond Likes and Dislikes. I'm going to read you what he said in that talk. He said, the Buddha pointed out the 4 ways that people get led off course. 2 of them are following your likes and dislikes. The other 2 are giving into delusion and fear. These things pull people off the path. We go wandering into the underbrush and then go off to who knows where simply because we like to follow what we like and avoid what we dislike. Even though the things we dislike are often the things we've got to really look at carefully. Why do we have such a dislike for them? Why do we have such a dislike for some things? And as for the things that we like, why do we like them? It's a good question to ask yourself both these questions. Exactly what do they do for us? It's easy to doubt other people. It's easy to doubt the teachings, but for some reason we find it very difficult to doubt our own defilements. All these convictions and preconceived notions we're unwilling to give up. So the defilements, you know, it's not necessarily this nasty, awful thing. It's just all these convictions and preconceived notions we're unwilling to give up. Only when we're willing to put them aside and open ourselves to the possibility, okay, maybe they're wrong. Also, remember of a master in her diary, you know, just kind of seemed to be craziness around her, and she kind of had it with it, and then she had a moment when she thought, well, maybe I could be wrong. Okay, so only when we're willing to put them aside and open ourselves to the possibility, okay, maybe they're wrong, can we open ourselves to the Dharma. What this comes down to is respect. The Buddha says that the reason we're suffering is because of the craving in our minds, and yet we like to hold on to our craving. Some crazy reason we like to hold on to our craving. We're attached to it. Of all the things we are attached to in life, that's probably the hardest thing to let go, our attachment to our cravings. And it's precisely here that the Buddha says, that's the problem. So it's a question of how much we're willing to suffer before we say, maybe he's right. So this is respecting the Buddha. Maybe he's right. Okay. And give some respect to his teachings. Read this correctly. Maybe he's right, and give him respect to his teachings. To take our respect for our likes and dislikes, our preconceived notions of what's right and wrong, what's good and bad, to put them aside for the time being, and give some respect to what the Buddha has said. So I don't think any one of us intentionally wants to disrespect the Buddha and his teachings. But I think sometimes we get all caught up in gravitating to what we think are the higher teachings and miss the subtleness of the basic teachings. The Buddha had many analogies, the handful of leaves and the leaves on the ground, and what was more and what was really necessary. Well, the leaves in his hand, the Four Noble Truths. That's why over and over again taught about the Four Noble Truths. Likes and dislikes, the opposites, are always with us. It just seems to be the way it is in this human form. We all prefer to be treated nicely, respectfully. Why wouldn't we? We enjoy certain types of work and struggle with other things that need doing. We get along with these people and we find those people difficult. We prefer this food over that food. Food's a wonderful place to look at our likes and dislikes. And how it is if you're always eating what you like, especially if it's very narrow, then it gets kind of old. So it's good to broaden. We would like our bodies as we age to remain youthful, and we aren't happy with its changes. We can even lose a command of our minds as we age. It's the way it is. These things are impermanent. The memory is not so good. We forget words and some concepts, and I'm talking about me here. I can't find the word sometime now, or the concept, or the... Okay. This is why it's so important to train the heart-mind in our practice. Okay. Not because, as a consequence, we will always have perfect mindfulness, memory, and recall. It doesn't work that way. But because with the training of the heart-mind, we will be more flexible, forgiving, and retain a good sense of humor as we age and our health falls away. I don't know, I think it's a better alternative. So even though we would like things to be a certain way, they're often not that way. We have a choice then. We can fight the way things are, or we can accept them and work with them as they are. That's really transformative. And, maybe they're not even as they initially appeared. Because, we sometimes don't see straight or correctly, or memory is not, as exact as we think it is. Maybe they're fine just as they are. The problem with attaching to likes and dislikes is that we are choosing a battle with impermanence. We're not going to win. We don't have control over impermanence. Also, with clinging to likes and dislikes, we create a self that is the way we want it to be. But again, that flies in the face of impermanence. Okay? We actually don't have control over many things outside ourselves. If we don't want to suffer, we have to move with the changes. A permanent separate self just bangs its head constantly. So in Food for Thought, the collected teachings of Ajahn Chah in the chapter entitled Living in the World with the Dharma. He has a few interesting things to say, which I'm going to read to you. Most people still don't know the essence of meditation practice. They think that walking meditation, sitting meditation, and listening to Dharma talks are the practice. That's true too, but these are only the outer forms of practice. The real practice takes place when the mind encounters a sense object. That's the place to practice, when sense contact occurs. When people say things we don't like, there is resentment. If they say things we like, we experience pleasure. Now, this is the place to practice. How are we going to practice with these things? This is the crucial point. If we just run around chasing after happiness and running away from suffering, we can practice until the day we die and never see the Dharma. When pleasure and pain arise, how are we going to use the Dharma to be free of them? This is the point of practice. Usually when people encounter something disagreeable, they don't open up to it. When people are criticized, for example, they may respond with, "Don't bother me. Why blame me?" This is the response of someone who's closed themselves off. Right there is the place to practice. When people criticize us, we should listen. Are they speaking the truth? And we should be open and consider what they say. That's not so easy to do. Maybe there is a point to what they say. Sometimes there is a point. Perhaps there is something blameworthy within us. Is that any shock? They may be right, and yet we immediately take offense. When people point out our faults, we should feel grateful and strive to improve ourselves. This is how intelligent people will practice. Okay, and he continues on in the next page. If we still don't know likes and dislikes as they arise, there will still be some anxiety in our minds. If we know the truth about them, we reflect, oh, there's nothing to this feeling of liking here. It's just a feeling that arises and passes away. Dislike too is just a feeling that arises and passes away. Why make anything out of them? If we think that pleasure and pain are personal possessions, we're in for trouble. And these problems feed each other in an endless chain. So the Buddha taught about the 8 worldly conditions. I'm sure you're all familiar with those: gain and loss, fame and disrepute, praise and blame, pleasure and pain. We can't avoid these conditions. They are part of being human and living in our world. They're worldly conditions, and we're living in the world. The Buddha says that an uninstructed worldling, now this uninstructed worldling, people can take offense with this term, I think, but what it means is just someone who has not been in contact with this teaching. And to be in contact with this teaching, you don't have to be a Buddhist. It exists all over our world because it's the truth. Anyway, the Buddha says that uninstructed worldlings come upon these conditions. They don't reflect upon the fact that they are impermanent, bound up with suffering, subject to change. When gain comes, they are elated, and when they meet with loss, they are dejected. When fame comes, they are elated, and when they meet with disrepute, they are dejected. When praise comes, they are elated, and when they meet with blame, they are dejected again. When they experience pleasure, they are elated, and when they experience pain, they are dejected. Being thus involved in likes and dislikes, they will not be freed from birth, aging, and death, from sorrow, lamentation, pain, dejection, and despair. They will not be free from suffering. And I think what he's saying is not that for instance, not that this, you don't get sad about something, but your attachment to the sadness, as being a permanence and being something that you can't work through. On the other hand, disciples of the Buddha who respect his Dharma reflect, this gain that has come to me is impermanent, bound up with suffering, subject to change. And so they will reflect when loss and so forth come upon them. They understand all these things as they really are, and they do not engross their minds. We have this way of kind of bringing this heavy burden to our minds. Life's hard enough. Thus, they will not be elated by gain and dejected by loss, elated by fame and dejected by disrepute, elated by praise and dejected by blame, elated by pleasure and dejected by pain. Having thus given up likes and dislikes, they will be freed from birth, aging, and death, from sorrow, lamentation, pain, dejection, and despair. They will be free from suffering. So, Bhikkhu Bodhi, this is where I found these quotations from the Buddha in his little book about, it's kind of a compilation of different Dharma pieces from all the from the Pali Canon, as a whole, to get an introduction to Buddhism. But he calls these 8 worldly conditions the vicissitudes of life. I love that word. Vicissitudes. It really has that, just kind of rolls off your tongue and makes you think you're really smart. So I looked up vicissitudes in the dictionary. Okay? It's interesting what the dictionary says. The dictionary says a condition of constant change as a natural process. Constant change as a natural process. Okay? Unpredictable changes or variations that keep occurring in life. So they're unpredictable and they keep occurring. So how are we going to work with them? The Buddha gives us a clear choice there. Shifting circumstances, ups and downs. It's kind of what I call the yo-yo effect. We're up, we're down, we're down, up, we're down. You ever see somebody make a yo-yo sleep? Just keep it in one position for a while. Quite a number of years ago, Reverend Master Mayan and myself, we'd gone to this Buddhist teachers conference. I think it was down at Spirit Rock. And, we were really fortunate. Mahagosananda, who was the head monk in Cambodia after the Khmer Rouge had done their stuff, and he marched through Cambodia, chanting the Metta Sutra and spreading loving kindness to heal, the atrocities and awful things that had gone on. But anyway, we had this great opportunity of meeting him, and he was, getting on in years, and I think some people were kind of concerned about him because he kind of wandered here and wandered there, and really, he had this beautiful face. It wasn't male or female. I mean, it's both. It's like he had transcended a lot of things. But so he's at this conference, and he's kind of wandering in and out of things. And there's some point at the conference where you're supposed to turn to the persons next to you and have a conversation about something. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it turned up Mahagosananda was sitting right next to us. So we had this great opportunity to ask him a question. So we asked him some Dharma question. Don't remember what that is now, because my mind is, slipping with time. And what he talked about were the 8 winds, which of course are the 8 worldly conditions, but they're sometimes called the 8 winds. And he said, the 8 winds, they're always there. He said, but you just kind of march right on through them. And I like that expression, the 8 winds, because, winds can knock you down, flatten you, or they can be a kind of push to something, to move on through something. And I think that's the better alternative. And that's it. So thank you.